The average American home contains over 300,000 items, while the average Japanese home has fewer than a tenth of that. Yet Japanese people report dramatically higher life satisfaction, lower stress, and a sense of daily calm that most Americans spend thousands of dollars on therapy and meditation apps trying to achieve. This is not about minimalism, as a trendy aesthetic you see in glossy architecture magazines. It is about a completely different relationship with the objects you allow into your life, a relationship so foreign to the Western mind that it can feel almost threatening at first. I have spent years visiting homes across Japan, from tiny Tokyo apartments no bigger than a Western hotel room to sprawling rural farmhouses in Nagano with wooden beams darkened by a century of wood smoke. And I have noticed the same pattern over and over, in wealthy homes and modest ones, in young families and elderly couples living alone. There are specific things Japanese people simply refuse to keep in their homes, not because they are disciplined or deprived, but because their entire framework for what a home should be is different from ours. And once you understand why, you will never look at your own cluttered space the same way again. Today, I am counting down 12 things you will never find in a Japanese home. And by the end, you will have a blueprint for a calmer, cleaner, more intentional life. Some of these are so obvious you will feel a little embarrassed you never thought of them. Others are so counterintuitive they will completely reframe how you think about your space and your relationship to everything in it. Number 12. Excessive furniture that touches the floor. Walk into a Japanese living room, and the first thing you notice, before you notice any object in particular, is how much open floor space there is. No oversized sectional swallowing half the room like a beached whale. No coffee table the size of a small car, dominating the center of the space. No entertainment center stretching wall to wall, with cabinets and shelves and cubbies all competing for your attention. Japanese homes prioritize floor space over furniture density, and this is not just an aesthetic choice or a concession to small apartments. It is a functional philosophy rooted in how Japanese people actually use their homes, hour by hour, day by day. The floor itself is a living surface. It is where children sprawl out to do homework and build elaborate train sets. It is where families gather around a low kotatsu table in winter, their legs tucked under the heated blanket, sharing mandarin oranges and cups of hot green tea. It is where futons are rolled out each night for sleeping, and then rolled up and stored away each morning, transforming the bedroom back into a living space. Every single piece of furniture that touches the floor is a piece of furniture that steals usable living space, that carves out a territory where nothing else can happen. A 2022 study from the University of Tokyo's Department of Architecture found that perceived spaciousness in Japanese homes correlates more strongly with open floor area than with total square footage, meaning a smaller home with less furniture actually feels larger and more liberating than a bigger home packed with pieces. The researchers used eye-tracking technology and stress hormone measurements to show that people in furniture-sparse rooms moved more freely, breathed more slowly, and reported feeling more at ease than those in furniture-dense rooms of identical dimensions. I remember visiting my friend Kenji in his apartment in Saitama, a place so small that by American standards it would be considered barely suitable for a single college student. And I was shocked, genuinely shocked, that his entire living room contained exactly 4 things. A low wooden table with the patina of years of use, 2 floor cushions covered in indigo-dyed fabric, and a single narrow shelf on the wall holding a few books and a small ceramic vase with a single seasonal branch. That was it. No couch, no armchair, no ottoman, no side tables, no television stand. When I asked him where his couch was, he looked genuinely confused, tilting his head the way people do when you have asked a question that reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of reality. He said, Why would I need a couch when I have a perfectly good floor? And then he sat down cross-legged on the tatami with a cup of tea and looked utterly comfortable. More comfortable than I ever looked sprawled across my overstuffed sofa back home. That question rewired something in my brain. I went home to my overstuffed American apartment, the one with the sectional that took up 60% of the living room floor. And suddenly, I saw every piece of furniture as a thief stealing space from my life, carving up my home into narrow pathways between bulky objects. Try this exercise, and I mean actually try it, not just nod along. Walk into your largest room and ask yourself what would happen if you removed half the furniture. Not stored it in the garage where it still belongs to you. Removed it from your life entirely. The answer, if you are honest, is that you would suddenly have a room that breathes. A room that invites movement. A room where you could stretch out on the floor with a book or play with your children, or simply lie on your back and stare at the ceiling and think. A room that feels twice as large without a single wall being moved. That is the Japanese baseline. That is where they start, and everything else flows from there. Number 11. Worn out or damaged items kept just in case. This one is brutally simple and brutally hard for the Western mind to accept, because it goes against a deeply ingrained scarcity mentality that most of us do not even realize we carry. Japanese people do not keep things that are broken, chipped, torn, or no longer serving their purpose. There is no drawer of dead batteries kept, because maybe one of them still has a little juice, and you might need it someday. No closet of clothes with broken zippers and frayed cuffs, waiting for a repair that you have been promising to get around to for 3 years and never will. No cabinet of mugs with hairline cracks that might someday be useful for a craft project that exists only in a hypothetical future where you suddenly become a person who does crafts. The Japanese concept of matanai is often mistranslated in Western media as simply meaning wastefulness or what a waste, but the actual meaning is deeper and more nuanced. It refers to a sense of regret over the intrinsic value of an object being wasted, a recognition that the thing itself deserves better than neglect. And here is the twist that completely flips the Western understanding on its head. Keeping a broken item you never fix is considered more matanai, more wasteful, more regrettable than letting it go. Because by keeping it in a drawer or a closet, you are wasting its potential to be useful to someone else, while also wasting your own space and mental energy on an object that is doing nothing but decaying. A 2019 survey by the Japan Consumer Affairs Agency found that over 70% of Japanese households regularly practice shurui, a seasonal decluttering ritual, often timed to the new year or the change of seasons, where damaged or unused items are repaired, donated, or respectfully discarded. There is no maybe pile. There is no I will fix it next month pile that sits untouched for years. The item is either in active use, serving its purpose in your life right now, or it leaves the home through one of several dignified exit routes. It is repaired and returned to service. It is donated to a second-hand shop where someone else will value it, or it is disposed of properly with a quiet thank you for its service. When I first tried to implement this in my own life, I had to confront some uncomfortable truths about myself. I realized I had been keeping a broken toaster for 3 years, 3 full years. I had bought a new toaster the week the old one broke, but I kept the broken one because I felt guilty throwing it away, as if my guilt was somehow honoring the toaster. 3 years of moving it aside to reach the working appliances. 3 years of it taking up precious counter space and mental bandwidth, a constant low-grade reminder of a task I was avoiding. The Japanese approach freed me from this ridiculous cycle. The toaster was already waste the moment it stopped working. Keeping it in my kitchen did not unbreak it. It just made my kitchen a landfill. Let that sink in for a moment, because it is uncomfortable and it is true. The thing you are keeping just in case, The chipped bowl, the torn shirt, the gadget that stopped working during the previous presidential administration is already garbage. And you are choosing, every single day, to store garbage in your living space. You would not leave a bag of actual trash on your kitchen counter for 3 years, but that is functionally what you are doing. The Japanese home draws a clear line: functioning and useful or gone. There is no third category. Number 10. Excessive decorative pillows and unnecessary bedding layers. This one might seem trivial at first glance. Like I am nitpicking about interior design preferences. But it points to a fundamental difference in how Japanese and Western cultures approach the entire concept of comfort. The average American bed is a monument to excess. It is piled with decorative pillows in various sizes: shams, Euro shams, throw pillows, lumbar pillows, and accent pillows that serve no function beyond aesthetics, and in fact actively interfere with the function of the bed. You have to remove half a dozen objects before you can actually lie down. Then there are the throw blankets artfully draped, the quilts folded at the foot of the bed, the layers of decorative shams that must be peeled away like an archaeological excavation before the bed is actually usable for its intended purpose. In a Japanese home, bedding is stored away entirely during the day, a concept that still blows my mind every time I think about it. The bedroom is not a bedroom for 24 hours. It is a room that becomes a bedroom at night and something else during the day. And even when the bedding is out, it is minimal and purposeful. The traditional futon is a single thin mattress laid directly on the tatami floor with one pillow, often filled with buckwheat hulls that conform to your head and neck, and one lightweight comforter. That is it. No throw pillows shaped like woodland creatures. No quilt folded artfully at the foot of the bed in a color that coordinates with the wall art. No layers of decorative shams whose only purpose is to be removed and then replaced every single day in a ritual that consumes minutes of your life you will never get back. This philosophy extends beyond the bed. You will rarely see purely decorative cushions on Japanese sofas or chairs, because Japanese furniture is designed from the ground up to be comfortable without them. The chair itself is shaped to support your body. It does not need a pillow to fix what the design got wrong. A 2020 study from Kyoto Prefectural University of Medicine found that sleeping on a firmer surface with minimal pillow height actually improved spinal alignment and reduced morning back pain in participants compared to plush Western bedding setups with multiple pillows and thick mattress toppers. The researchers tracked participants over an 8-week period and found measurable improvements in sleep quality scores and reductions in reported pain upon waking. The decorative pillow industrial complex has convinced us we need layers and layers of fluff to be comfortable, that more softness equals more rest. But Japanese homes prove that comfort comes from simplicity and intentionality, not from accumulation. I spent my first month in Japan sleeping on a proper futon in a tatami room in a guest house in Kyoto, and I woke up without back pain for the first time in years. I had been living with a dull ache in my lower back every morning for so long that I had stopped noticing it, the way you stop noticing a refrigerator hum until it suddenly turns off. When I returned to my American bed with its 6 pillows of varying densities and its memory foam topper that swallowed my body like quicksand, it suddenly felt excessive, almost suffocating, a soft cage rather than a place of rest. I stripped it down to one pillow and a simple blanket and never looked back. My back thanked me. My mornings thanked me. And I reclaimed the 10 minutes a day I had been spending arranging and rearranging decorative pillows for an audience of 0. Number 9. Expired food and old leftovers. The average American refrigerator is a graveyard of good intentions, and I say this as someone whose refrigerator used to be a mausoleum. Condiments from 2 Super Bowls ago, their lids crusted with dried sauce, their contents separated into unappealing layers. Leftovers pushed to the back and forgot until they evolve into a science experiment, growing molds in colors not found in nature. Produce that was bought with ambitious meal prep dreams, the kale and the herbs and the delicate greens, and then abandoned to slowly liquefy in the crisper drawer into a brown sludge that must be scrubbed out with steel wool and regret. The USDA estimates that American households waste between 30 and 40% of their food supply, and a shocking amount of that waste sits in refrigerators for days or weeks before finally being thrown out, taking up space and generating guilt the entire time. Japanese households operate on a completely different system, and it is not because Japanese people have more willpower or are morally superior. It is because the entire infrastructure of daily life supports a different relationship with food. Refrigerators are smaller, much smaller, often compact units that fit under a counter rather than looming double-door monoliths. Shopping trips are more frequent, often daily or every other day, at small neighborhood markets, butcher shops, fishmongers, and vegetable stands within walking distance of home. This means the refrigerator is rarely packed to capacity. You can see what you have at a glance. Nothing gets pushed to the back and buried behind a wall of newer purchases. The cultural practice of eating until the plate is clean, of not taking more than you can finish, means very little food lingers long enough to expire in the first place. A 2021 report from Japan's Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries found that Japanese household food waste is roughly half the per capita rate of American households, despite Japanese people eating more fresh produce and seafood, which theoretically spoils faster than processed packaged foods. The secret is not better Tupperware or a more organized refrigerator. It is a system that treats food as precious and perishable, as something to be purchased with intention and used promptly, not as something to stockpile against some imaginary apocalypse. I used to be the person with a refrigerator full of forgotten leftovers, the person who would buy a bunch of cilantro for one recipe and then watch it turn to slime over the following 2 weeks. Then I started shopping like a Japanese homemaker. Small amounts bought fresh, used quickly, with a clear plan for every ingredient before it went into my basket. My food waste dropped to almost zero within 2 weeks, and my grocery bill dropped too, by a noticeable margin, because I was no longer buying food just to throw it away. The refrigerator became a place of nourishment rather than a place of guilt. I could open the door and see everything, and everything I saw was something I was excited to eat. That shift alone changed my relationship with my kitchen. Number 8. Shoes worn inside the house. This is the one most Westerners have heard about, the one that makes it into travel guides and cultural tip lists, but almost none truly understand the depth of what it represents. Removing shoes at the door is not a quirky cultural preference, like preferring tea over coffee or bowing instead of shaking hands. It is a sacred boundary between the dirty outside world and the clean sanctuary of home, a boundary that is maintained with an almost religious consistency. The Genkin, the traditional Japanese entryway, is a physical and psychological transition zone. It is literally a step down from the rest of the house, a sunken area where outdoor shoes are removed and stored before you step up onto the clean floor of the living space. The architecture itself enforces the boundary. You cannot accidentally walk into a Japanese home with your shoes on because the floor level changes and you would trip. This is not negotiable. In every Japanese home I have ever entered, from my professor's elegant traditional house in Kyoto with its sliding paper screens and hand-polished wooden veranda, to my student friend's shoebox apartment in Osaka where the Genkin was barely large enough for 2 pairs of shoes. Shoes come off at the Genkin without exception, without discussion, without anyone even thinking about it. The reasoning is both practical and spiritual, and both are equally important. Practically, a 2018 study from the University of Arizona found that the average shoe sole carries over 400 units of bacteria, including fecal matter, E. coli, and a whole host of pathogens tracked from public restrooms, sidewalks, subway platforms, and parking lots. Bringing those shoes into your home means spreading that bacteria across your floors, where you walk barefoot, where your children sit and play, where you might set down a bag that later goes on your kitchen counter. The researchers swabbed shoes and found contamination levels that would fail a health inspection in a restaurant. Yet we track those same shoes across our bedroom carpets and then wonder why we get sick. Spiritually, the Jenkin represents the separation of Soto, outside, and Ucha, inside. The outside world is stressful, dirty, chaotic, and full of demands. The home is a refuge of cleanliness and peace, a place where you can let your guard down. Crossing that threshold without removing your shoes violates the sanctity of the home itself, brings the chaos of the outside world into the one place that is supposed to be separate from it. I adopted this habit 5 years ago, buying a simple shoe rack for my entryway and a pair of indoor slippers, and I will never go back. My floors stay cleaner for longer. My seasonal allergies improved noticeably, which my doctor said was likely due to reduced pollen and particulate matter being tracked indoors. And there is a psychological shift that happens every single time I step out of my outdoor shoes and into my house slippers. My shoulders drop. My breathing slows. My jaw unclenches. I am home now. The outside world is outside. This space is mine. Number 7. Giant cleaning supply arsenals. Walk down the cleaning aisle of any American supermarket, and you are confronted with a dizzying, almost comical array of specialized products. Glass cleaner in blue bottles, bathroom cleaner in green bottles, kitchen cleaner in yellow bottles, floor cleaner for tile, floor cleaner for wood, floor cleaner for laminate, stainless steel cleaner, granite clean. Toilet bowl cleaner, shower spray, daily shower spray, and on, an endless parade of brightly colored plastic bottles, each promising to solve one specific cleaning problem with one specific proprietary chemical formula. The average American home has a cabinet, or more likely several cabinets, stuffed full of these products, many of them half-used, some of them purchased for a specific cleaning emergency and then forgotten. Japanese homes do not do this. The Japanese cleaning philosophy is built on a handful of simple, often natural agents used for almost everything. Baking soda for scrubbing and deodorizing, vinegar for cutting grease and disinfecting, citric acid for removing hard water stains, a mild dish soap for general cleaning. These 4 items will handle 95% of household cleaning tasks, from the kitchen counters to the bathroom tile to the floors. A 2020 survey by a major Japanese consumer research group found that over 60% of Japanese households use fewer than 5 distinct cleaning products regularly, compared to the average American household, which stocks over a dozen different specialized cleaners. This is not about saving money, though it does save money dramatically. It is about reducing decision fatigue and chemical exposure. When you have one cleaner that works on counters, floors, and bathrooms, you do not spend 10 minutes standing in front of an open cabinet reading labels and trying to decide which of 12 products is the correct one for this particular surface. You just clean. The mental friction disappears. I visited a Japanese friend's mother in her home in Nara. A beautiful old house with dark wooden beams and a small garden visible through the kitchen window. I asked to see her cleaning supplies, curious what products she used to keep her home so immaculate. She looked at me with a slight smile, the kind that suggests the question itself reveals something about my foreignness. She opened a single small cabinet under the sink and showed me 3 things: a box of baking soda, a bottle of rice vinegar, and a worn wooden scrub brush with bristles shaped by years of use. That was it. Her home was immaculate. Not just clean in the superficial sense, but deeply, peacefully clean. No synthetic fragrance masking odors with artificial flower scents. No chemical residue on surfaces leaving a sticky film. No warning labels about keeping the product away from children and pets. Just simple agents doing their work, the same agents Japanese households have used for generations. I went home, threw out my collection of specialized cleaners, the tub and tile spray and the glass cleaner and the stainless steel wipes, and replaced them with baking soda and vinegar. My home has never been cleaner, and my cleaning time has been cut in half because I am no longer switching between products and worrying about chemical interactions and reading instructions. I just clean. It turns out cleaning is simple when you stop letting marketing departments convince you it is complicated. Number 6. Unfinished books and unused hobby supplies. This one stung when I first recognized it in my own life, and I suspect it will sting for many of you as well. Japanese homes do not contain aspirational clutter. What I mean by that is, there are no bookshelves full of books that will be read someday. The thick classics and the impressive nonfiction tomes purchased because you want to be the kind of person who reads those books. No closets stuffed with skeins of beautiful yarn for a knitting hobby that never materialized beyond a single enthusiastic afternoon. No guitar in the corner gathering dust from the 3 lessons taken in 2019, its strings slowly going out of tune, a silent monument to a version of yourself that never came into being. No easel and oil paints from the phase where you were going to become a painter. No unopened yoga mat from the January resolution 3 years ago. There is no shame pile of creative dreams deferred, no museum of abandoned selves. Japanese culture treats unfinished commitments as a form of mental weight, a drag on your consciousness. The concept of zanshin, borrowed from martial arts, means a state of complete follow-through, with no lingering unfinished business. A mind that is fully present because it is not haunted by loose ends. This applies not just to actions, but to possessions. An unread book is an unfinished intention sitting on your shelf, silently judging you every time you walk past it. A bag of untouched yarn is a promise you made to yourself and then broke, and you have to look at the evidence of that broken promise every time you open the closet. A 2021 study from Osaka University's Department of Psychology found that visual clutter in the home, specifically items associated with uncompleted tasks or abandoned goals, produced measurable increases in cortisol levels, the body's primary stress hormone. The researchers called it visual debt, the accumulated weight of seeing things you meant to do but never did, and they found that this visual debt was a stronger predictor of chronic stress than the total amount of clutter alone. A pile of laundry is just laundry. A pile of art supplies for a hobby you have abandoned is a reminder of failure. Japanese homes avoid this by being ruthlessly honest about what is actually happening in your life versus what is a fantasy. If you are not reading the book, donate it to a library or a used bookstore where someone else will actually read it. If you are not doing the hobby, sell the supplies or give them to someone who will use them. The space clears and so does the guilt. I had a shelf of unread philosophy books, the kind with dense prose and names like Kierkegaard and Heidegger, that I kept because I wanted to be the kind of person who reads philosophy. I had not opened any of them in 5 years. When I finally boxed them up and donated them, I felt a physical lightness I cannot adequately describe. A sensation almost like taking off a heavy backpack after a long hike. I was no longer performing intelligence for an audience of 0. I was just living honestly in my own space, surrounded by things I actually used and actually loved. That honesty is worth more than any book I never read. Number 5. Old phones, chargers, and mystery cables. There is a drawer in nearly every American home that is a technological graveyard. And if you are sitting there thinking, not my home, I invite you to go check that one drawer. The one in the kitchen, or the home office, or the hallway cabinet. The one you avoid opening because you know what is inside. Phones from 3 upgrades ago, their screens cracked, their batteries long dead. Chargers for devices that no longer exist. Proprietary connectors for gadgets that were obsolete before the current decade began. Tangles of cables whose purpose has been forgotten. USB cables of various vintages. Audio cables, video cables, cables with connectors you do not even recognize. Adapters and dongles and power bricks for laptops that were recycled years ago. The accumulated electronic sediment of modern life. Japanese homes do not have this drawer. The Japanese relationship with technology is defined by a concept called danshari, which means refusal, disposal, and separation. When a device is replaced, the old one is immediately recycled or sold to a second-hand electronics shop. There is no sentimental attachment to a flip phone from 2006. There is no vague, anxious fear that maybe someday, in some hypothetical future scenario, someone might desperately need a proprietary charging cable for a digital camera manufactured in 2004. The old device has been superseded. Its purpose has been fulfilled. It is time for it to move on. A 2019 report from Japan's Ministry of the Environment found that Japan has one of the highest rates of consumer electronics recycling in the world, with over 80% of discarded devices being properly processed through official recycling channels rather than languishing in drawers and closets. This is partly driven by space constraints. The average Japanese apartment simply does not have room for a drawer of electronic fossils. Every square inch matters, and a drawer full of dead technology is a drawer that cannot hold things you actually need. But it is also driven by a cultural comfort with letting go, a recognition that an old phone is not a repository of memories. It is a brick. The memories are in your mind and in the photos you transferred to your new device. The object itself has no value. It is just metal and glass and plastic that once served a purpose and now does not. When I finally cleared out my own cable graveyard, I filled an entire shopping bag with dead chargers, frayed cords, obsolete adapters, and devices that had not powered on in a decade. The drawer, which had been jammed shut for years, requiring a firm yank and a strategic wiggle to open, closed properly for the first time since I moved into that apartment. Smoothly, quietly. That small victory felt disproportionately satisfying. I opened and closed the drawer 3 times just to feel it glide. Then I took the bag to an electronics recycling center and never thought about any of those items again. Number 4. Large, inefficient kitchen appliances. The American kitchen is a monument to countertop real estate. And the real estate is crowded with tenants that rarely pay rent. Stand mixers that get used twice a year, on Thanksgiving and maybe one ambitious baking weekend in February. Air fryers that seemed like a good idea after watching a few cooking videos. Used enthusiastically for 2 weeks, and then relegated to the corner where they sit collecting a fine film of kitchen grease. Bread machines from the sourdough era of 2020, when everyone was stuck at home and convinced they would become artisanal bakers. Juicers that were used for a 3-day juice cleanse and then never touched again. Food processors, panini presses, electric griddles, waffle irons, rice cookers, slow cookers, pressure cookers, and specialized gadgets designed to do one very specific thing that a knife and a pan could do just as well with a tiny bit more effort. Japanese kitchens, even in larger homes, are notable for what they do not contain. Countertops are clear, expanses of clean, workable surface. Appliances are small, multi-purpose, and stored away in cabinets when not in use. The rice cooker is non-negotiable, a sacred appliance in the Japanese kitchen, but it earns its counter space by being used nearly every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. The electric kettle earns its place through constant service, providing hot water for tea, for instant miso soup, for quick noodle lunches. But the unitaskers, the gadgets that do one thing and then sit idle for months on end, simply do not exist in Japanese kitchens. A 2022 survey by a Japanese Home Economics Research Institute found that the average Japanese kitchen contains fewer than 5 countertop appliances total, compared to the American average of over a dozen. This is partly a function of smaller kitchen footprints, where counter space is precious and must be defended. But it is also a design philosophy that runs deeper than square footage. Japanese cooking emphasizes fresh preparation with simple, high-quality tools. A good knife, sharp and well-balanced. A good cutting board, wooden and substantial. A good pan, carbon steel or well-seasoned cast iron. And a rice cooker. These tools will take you further than a counter full of specialized gadgets that each save you 30 seconds on a task you do twice a year. I donated my stand mixer, my juicer, and my panini press 3 years ago, in one decisive weekend purge. I have not missed any of them for a single second. Not once have I thought, if only I still had that panini press. My countertops are clear. I can actually cook without moving piles of unused appliances out of the way, without creating a temporary workspace on top of the stove, because the counters are occupied by machines I never use. The space itself makes cooking more joyful because there is room to work, room to spread out ingredients, room to breathe. Cooking went from feeling like a chore performed in a cluttered workshop to feeling like a creative act in a clean, open space. Number 3. Sentimental clutter from the distant past. This is the hardest category for most Westerners, the one that triggers the most resistance and the most emotional pushback. And it is the one where Japanese culture offers the most profound and challenging lesson. Japanese homes do not contain boxes of childhood artwork, the macaroni portraits and handprint turkeys, and crayon drawings that accumulate over years of school projects. They do not have closets full of old letters and greeting cards, birthday cards from relatives you barely remember, holiday cards from colleagues you have not worked with in a decade. There are no bins of baby clothes waiting for grandchildren who may or may not arrive, stored in attics and basements and garages, taking up space for decades against a future that is not guaranteed. This is not because Japanese people are less sentimental than Westerners. It is not because they love their children less or value their memories less. It is because Japanese culture has a completely different framework for processing sentimental objects, a framework that is both more honest and more freeing. The concept of mono, no aware, often translated as the pathos of things or the bitter sweetness of existence, is an aesthetic sensitivity to the impermanence of all things. It is the awareness that everything passes, that cherry blossoms fall after a week of blooming, that seasons change, that children grow up, that life is a series of beautiful, fleeting moments. And this passing, this impermanence, is precisely what gives things their beauty. A cherry blossom that lasted forever would not be beautiful, it would be plastic. Holding onto an object does not preserve the moment it represents. The moment is already gone. It existed, it was beautiful or meaningful or painful or important, and then it passed, and that is okay. The object is just an object. It is not the memory. It is not the person. It is not the moment. A 2020 study from the University of Tokyo's Department of Cultural Psychology found that Japanese participants were significantly more likely than Western participants to report that memories reside in the mind and heart rather than in physical objects, and were more willing to part with sentimental items without experiencing distress. The researchers presented participants with sentimental objects and measured both self-reported attachment and physiological stress responses when asked to consider parting with them. The Japanese participants showed lower stress responses and were more likely to say things like, "The memory is inside me. I do not need the thing." This is not coldness. It is not emotional repression. It is a deeper acceptance of life's impermanence, a willingness to let the past be the past instead of dragging it into the present in the form of boxes and bins. My Japanese friend Yuki once showed me a single small wooden box, maybe the size of a shoebox, that contained all of her sentimental items from her entire life. A few photographs, a letter from her grandmother written in elegant vertical script, a small smooth stone from a beach where she had a significant memory, a pressed flower from an important day. That was it. Her entire sentimental archive fit in one small box. She told me, "If I keep everything, nothing is special." I think about that sentence constantly. If I keep everything, nothing is special. I had bins and bins of old journals, old photos, old trinkets and souvenirs and mementos that I never looked at but felt obligated to keep, as if my continued possession of them was a form of loyalty to my past self. When I finally went through them, I realized I was preserving a museum of my past that I never visited, curating an archive for no one. I kept a handful of truly precious items, the ones that made my heart catch when I held them, and let the rest go. The relief was immediate and lasting. My past no longer occupied physical space in my present. Number 2. Clutter on horizontal surfaces. This is the habit that will most immediately and dramatically transform the feeling of your home if you adopt it today, starting right now, before you even finish this list. Japanese homes maintain what I call the horizontal surface rule, and it is deceptively simple. Tables, counters, desks, nightstands, dressers, and floors remain clear unless an item is actively in use at that very moment. There are no piles of mail accumulating on the kitchen counter, the envelopes unopened, the junk mail mingling with the bills. No stacks of books on the nightstand, the ones you are definitely going to read next, forming a tower that collects dust and casts a shadow of mild guilt over your bedtime routine. No keys, sunglasses, loose change, receipts, pens, notepads, or random detritus colonizing every flat surface like a slow-moving invasion. Everything, and I mean everything, has a designated home, a specific drawer or shelf or cabinet where it lives, and when it is not in use, it returns to that home. This is not achieved through constant frantic tidying, through a never-ending battle against entropy that leaves you exhausted. It is achieved through a system where the default state is clear, and anything placed on a surface is immediately noticeable as out of place, which triggers a quick, almost unconscious return to its home. A 2021 study from the National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology in Japan, one of the country's premier research institutions, found that visual clutter on horizontal surfaces significantly increases cognitive load, making it harder to focus, harder to relax, and harder to fall asleep. The researchers had participants spend time in rooms with either clear or cluttered surfaces and measured their heart rates, cortisol levels, and performance on cognitive tasks. The results were striking. Participants in rooms with clear surfaces showed lower heart rates, lower cortisol levels, and better performance on tasks requiring sustained attention. The mechanism is straightforward and intuitive once you think about it. Your brain processes everything in your visual field, whether you are consciously aware of it or not. Every object you can see is a piece of data your brain must catalog and evaluate. A pile of mail is not just a pile of mail. It is a pile of unfinished tasks, each envelope a small demand for your attention. A cluttered counter is not just messy. It is a visual to-do list that your brain cannot stop reading. Japanese homes understand this intuitively and design against it. Every item has a home behind a door, in a drawer on a shelf. Surfaces are for living, for preparing food, for setting down a cup of tea, for resting your hands. They are not for storing. I implemented this rule in my own home, and the effect was almost psychedelic. Like putting on glasses for the first time and realizing the world had been blurry. Walking into a room with completely clear surfaces felt like walking into a high-end hotel, except it was my own home, and I got to live there every day. My mind quieted, I could think clearly. I could relax without the background hum of visual noise, the constant low-grade processing of all the stuff. I started sleeping better. I started feeling calmer in my own space. All because I cleared my surfaces and kept them clear. Number 1. The belief that more stuff equals more happiness. This is the foundational principle that makes all the other items on this list possible. The invisible architecture underlying every Japanese home I have ever visited. And it is the most difficult one for the Western mind to truly internalize. Japanese homes do not contain the core belief that acquiring more possessions will lead to greater life satisfaction. This is not because Japanese people have achieved some Buddhist enlightenment about materialism, or because they are somehow immune to the desire for nice things. It is because Japanese culture has developed a completely different framework for what makes a home feel rich, what makes a space feel full, what makes a life feel abundant. The concept of ma, which translates roughly to negative space or the space between things, is central to Japanese aesthetics and to the Japanese understanding of what makes something beautiful. A room is not empty. It is full of ma. The space between objects is not wasted space, not an absence waiting to be filled. It is the most important element in the composition. Think of the silence between notes in music. Without the silence, the notes would just be noise. The silence gives the notes their shape, their meaning, their beauty. Think of the pause between words in poetry. The pause is not empty. It is full of meaning, full of anticipation, full of the weight of what was just said. The open floor between pieces of furniture, the clear wall without decoration, the empty counter without appliances. These are not absences. They are presences. They are the breathing room that allows the objects that do exist to be seen and appreciated. A 2022 study from Kyoto University's Department of Environmental Psychology found that participants who spent time in spaces designed with Ma principles, spaces with intentional emptiness and clear areas, reported higher levels of tranquility, creativity, and subjective well-being compared to those in densely furnished spaces, even when both spaces had the exact same square footage. The researchers concluded that the Western equation of more equals better is neurologically counterproductive. Our brains need space to process, to breathe, to be. Constant visual stimulation is not enriching. It is exhausting. Japanese homes provide this space, not because Japanese people are minimalists in the trendy Western sense, not because they are depriving themselves or making a political statement about consumerism. They provide this space because they understand, at a deep cultural level, that possessions are not the point. The point is the life that happens in the space between them, the conversation that happens around the low table, the quiet morning tea enjoyed in a room with nothing competing for your attention, the deep sleep that comes in a room free of visual noise, the child playing on an open floor, the thought that arises in the silence between stimuli. When I finally understood this, not just intellectually but in my body, my entire relationship with stuff changed. I stopped asking, "Do I want this?" which is the question that has filled American homes with 300,000 items. I started asking, is this worth the space it will steal from my life? The space it will occupy not just physically but mentally, the visual real estate it will claim in my home, and the cognitive real estate it will claim in my brain? The answer almost always was no. My home is not stark or empty. It is full of Ma. It is full of room to breathe, room to think, room to move, room to live. And that is worth more than anything I could ever buy.